The sun was a thin strip of orange, barely peeking over the horizon, its fading light barely cutting through the smoky haze that had choked the earth for the last decade. The ruins of New York sprawled beneath Commander Adrian Kaine's boots, a ghost city where memories of humanity's golden age now lay in tatters. The mission was supposed to be simple, a routine sweep of the area. But Kaine knew, deep down, nothing in this war was ever simple anymore. "Commander, we've got company." Sergeant Eliza Torres's voice crackled over the comms. Her tone was calm, but there was no mistaking the tension. She had been with Kaine for years. If she said they were being watched, they were. Kaine raised a hand, signaling the squad to halt. The remnants of a destroyed skyscraper towered above them, casting long shadows in the dying light. Every corner, every piece of debris could hide an enemy, and every footstep they took could be their last. "Move out. Stay tight," Kaine ordered. His voice was steady, a calm in the midst of the chaos, but his mind raced. The intelligence reports had suggested the area was clear. But after months of alien incursions, he knew better than to trust any intel. The enemy adapted. They learned. They waited. They watched. His team moved swiftly, their boots crunching on the shattered glass and metal debris scattered across the ground. They were close to the old government district, a place of interest for the alien forces who had overrun the planet. The whispers had started long ago. The aliens were searching for something. But what? That's what Kaine and his team were supposed to find out. They reached the edge of the district. A broken streetlight flickered, casting a sickly yellow glow on the cracked pavement. Kaine checked his weapon, his pulse steady, but there was an unsettling feeling gnawing at him. Something was wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he could feel it in his bones. "Stay sharp," Kaine muttered, his hand instinctively gripping the hilt of his combat knife. The feel of it was grounding, like it had been with him through countless battles. But this felt different. "Eyes open," Torres whispered, her eyes scanning the surroundings. Her sniper rifle was trained on the far end of the street, where shadows moved just outside the range of their sight. A low rumble vibrated through the ground, distant at first, but growing louder with each passing second. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a vehicle. It was something bigger, something massive. "Not what we were expecting," Private Daniels said, his voice tight with nervousness. "Command said the area was clear. I don't like this." "Neither do I," Kaine replied, his voice like steel, though his mind raced. He checked his watch. The time was approaching, but this was no regular patrol. They were here to recover something. Or someone. They didn't expect an ambush. "Everyone, into position!" Kaine barked. His squad spread out, taking cover behind the ruined remnants of buildings, weapon sights locked on the movement. It wasn't just one enemy. There were dozens, maybe more. The ground shook again, this time with purpose. The sound of something enormous trudging forward sent a wave of unease through Kaine's stomach. They were about to find out what had made this city their hunting ground. A monstrous figure emerged from the fog, its massive form indistinguishable at first, but then it shifted into view. An alien war machine, a towering sentinel of death, its body a patchwork of advanced technology and organic tissue. It lumbered forward, massive feet pounding the earth, sending tremors through the ground with each step. "Open fire!" Kaine shouted, and the squad unleashed hell. Their weapons lit up the darkness, a storm of bullets and plasma bolts ripping into the air. The alien war machine staggered, its thick armor taking the brunt of the attack, but it didn't fall. Instead, it turned, its glowing red eyes scanning the wreckage, focusing on them. It was calculating, deliberate. A few more shots ricocheted off its hull, but it wasn't enough. "Fall back!" Kaine shouted, knowing their assault wouldn't be enough. They had to find the source of the alien presence, their objective, hidden deep within the district. But this behemoth had them pinned down. "Commander, we're surrounded!" Torres's voice rang out over the comms. There were more of them, smaller drones darting through the air, laser sights locked onto their positions. Kaine's heart pounded in his chest. There was no way out. He could feel the walls closing in. His team's retreat had been blocked, and the enemy was closing in, but he couldn't just run. Not when he was so close. His mind snapped to a different course of action. We fight through. Move! Kaine ordered, adrenaline surging. The team broke formation, moving in a coordinated sprint to the left, seeking cover behind the shattered remnants of a fallen building. Their movement was quick, but the enemy was relentless. Plasma fire lanced through the air, narrowly missing them. Kaine's focus remained sharp. He pulled a small, circular device from his belt, an EMP grenade. One shot. That was all it would take to disable the war machine, but the timing had to be perfect. "Cover me!" he yelled as he sprinted toward the center of the street. The team's weapons roared, keeping the drones busy as Kaine pulled the pin and hurled the grenade with deadly precision. The explosion sent a shockwave through the air, but it was a victory too small. The war machine faltered, but it didn't fall. Just as Kaine thought they had a moment, a loud screech rang out from above. A drone, larger than the rest, descended from the sky with speed and ferocity, locking its targeting system on Kaine. "No!" he shouted, realizing too late that the creature was already too close. A sharp burst of light blinded him, followed by a deafening crash. The impact threw him off his feet, sending him sprawling across the broken street. His vision blurred, and the taste of blood filled his mouth. "Commander!" Torres's voice pierced through the haze, but it was distant. Everything felt distant. Kaine struggled to stand, blood dripping from his nose, his vision swimming. He had a choice to make. Would he let this be the end? Or would he fight until there was nothing left to fight for? "I'm not done yet," he muttered under his breath, the weight of his squad's survival pushing him forward. The enemy may have thought they were winning, but Kaine knew better. This wasn't over, not yet. Burning with the promise of vengeance. Kaine's eyes snapped open. The first thing he felt was the cold, a sharp contrast to the fiery blast that had knocked him out. His head throbbed with a dull pain, and his limbs felt heavy, like they were made of stone. He lay on a hard surface, disoriented. The blackness was still lingering, but there was something different this time. Something wasn't right. His breath came in shallow gasps as he slowly pushed himself up. The world around him swam into focus, but it wasn't the devastated alleyway he had been in. He was somewhere else. The walls were metallic, the air dry, tinged with the smell of antiseptic and burning ozone. "Where?" Kaine muttered, wincing as he raised a hand to his head. His fingers brushed against the cool metal of a chair. It was then he realized he was strapped down, his arms bound to the cold surface beneath him. Panic surged through him, but he fought to keep it in check. Footsteps echoed from somewhere beyond his view. Then, a voice, smooth and eerily calm. "Ah, you're awake!" Kaine's heart skipped a beat as the figure stepped into his line of sight. His breath caught in his throat. The man who had betrayed him, the one who had nearly killed him, was standing before him. The same smug smile, the same cold eyes that had filled him with so much hate. It was Officer Julian Cross, a former ally, now a traitor to humanity. "You've got some nerve, Cross," Kaine spat, his voice rough. The bindings around his wrists dug into his skin, but his fury outweighed the pain. "I'll make sure you regret this." Cross merely tilted his head, his lips curling into a twisted smirk. "Regret? Oh, Kaine! You have no idea how far this goes. It's far beyond you. Beyond humanity." The words sent a shiver down Kaine's spine. He had always suspected there were factions within their own ranks working with the aliens, but hearing Cross admit it so casually, it was like the final betrayal. A friend, a colleague, turned enemy. A ghost from his past now standing as the architect of his downfall. "What do you want from me?" Kaine growled, his muscles straining against the restraints. He wasn't going to give Cross the satisfaction of seeing him break, but the situation was dire. "You want me to beg? I'm not your puppet." Cross chuckled, the sound hollow. "Begging? No, Kaine. You'll never beg. But you will see things my way, eventually." He took a step closer, the eerie hum of his powered armor filling the space between them. Cross wasn't the same man Kaine had fought beside all those years ago. This version of him was colder, more calculating. A tool of the enemy now. You see, this isn't about power, or wealth, or control, Cross said, pacing in front of him, his voice full of conviction. It's about survival. The galaxy is on the brink of something much bigger than your pathetic human wars. The aliens, they have a plan. They've always had a plan. And humanity is too flawed, too weak to be part of that plan. Kaine struggled against his restraints, but they held firm. His mind raced, trying to understand what Cross was saying. What are you talking about? He demanded. We've fought for our survival. And you want to side with the ones who want to wipe us out? Cross's gaze hardened, his face losing its smirk. It's not about wiping you out, Kaine. It's about shaping the future. Humans are a cancer. A species that refuses to evolve. The aliens, they understand that. They're offering us a chance to ascend, to join the true rulers of this universe. Kaine's pulse quickened as he tried to make sense of it. Cross wasn't just a traitor. He was a believer in the alien cause, willing to sacrifice humanity's future for some twisted idea of evolution and survival. You're insane, Kaine spat, his chest rising with fury. You've abandoned everything we fought for. You're no better than the aliens you claim to be helping. For a moment there was silence. Then, Cross's voice cut through the tension, low and dangerous. You think I abandoned humanity? You're wrong. I did what I had to do. What we had to do. The rest of your people, they don't understand. They're too weak to see the bigger picture. Kaine's eyes narrowed. Then you're just another pawn. How does it feel to sell your soul for a lie? The mockery returned to Cross's face, but it didn't reach his eyes. You'll understand soon enough. The question is, Kaine, how long are you going to resist? How much longer can you fight against the inevitable? Kaine's jaw clenched. The restraint of his body couldn't stop the fire burning in his chest. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about preserving everything humanity had built, everything they had fought for. And he wasn't going to let someone like Cross destroy it all. I'm done listening to your delusions, Kaine said, his voice cold. Get out of my face. Cross stepped back, a dangerous gleam in his eyes. Very well, Commander. You'll have time to think about it. We all do. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Kaine alone in the sterile, metallic room. The doors slid shut with a hiss, and Kaine was left in the dark silence, his heart pounding in his chest. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Kaine's mind raced. Cross's words had struck him deeply. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. The enemy was within, and it was far more dangerous than anything the aliens could throw at them. A traitor had infiltrated their ranks. A man who had once been a hero, now willing to sacrifice everything for a twisted vision of the future. But Kaine wasn't done yet. No matter what Cross believed, humanity wasn't going to give up. Kaine would escape. He would survive. And he would make sure that Cross's vision of the future died with him. Cliffhanger ending asterisk. Kaine's fingers brushed the side of his restraints, searching for any weakness. His thoughts were already turning to the next step, getting out of the cell and taking the fight back to the traitors. His blood was boiling, and in that moment, he knew one thing for sure: Cross had made a grave mistake. Kaine wasn't going to let him win. And he would do whatever it took to stop him. The cell's cold metallic walls were closing in on Kaine. His mind raced, his body throbbing with the ache of restraint. Every fiber of his being screamed for action, for escape, but the sharp sting of helplessness gnawed at him. Cross had left him here, shackled, believing he had won. But Kaine knew better. The traitor may have underestimated him, but that was a mistake. Kaine was no stranger to the depths of despair. He had been in worse situations. His resolve had never wavered before, and it wouldn't break now. The faint sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor, bringing Kaine back to the present. His mind snapped into focus. He had to move, and fast. He flexed his hands against the cold restraints, feeling the rough edges bite into his wrists. His movements were deliberate, each second critical. With one last, forceful tug, the bond snapped. The sound was like music to his ears. He took a moment to savor the feeling of freedom before rising to his feet. His legs were stiff from the hours of immobility, but they held. He moved quickly, silent as a shadow, and crept toward the door. The security system would be a challenge, but Kaine had broken out of tougher prisons. He wasn't about to let Cross's betrayal become his tomb. With a single, practiced motion, he accessed the control panel beside the door, bypassing the security lock with a series of precise keystrokes. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Kaine stepped into the hallway, his senses alert to every movement, every sound. The air was thick with tension, the hum of alien technology and distant voices making the silence seem almost oppressive. But Kaine didn't flinch. His every step was calculated, each one closer to finding his team, to stopping Cross, and to stopping whatever twisted plan he was a part of. The corridor stretched ahead of him, dark and narrow. As he moved forward, the sound of distant conversation reached his ears. Two guards, speaking in hushed tones, oblivious to his presence. Kaine's hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side, a sleek, compact plasma gun, but he held back. Violence wasn't the answer, at least, not yet. His mission was to escape, to get back to his team, to make Cross pay. He pressed his back against the wall, staying in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. The guards walked past him, unaware of his presence, their conversation drifting by like static. Kaine held his breath as they moved further down the hall, the seconds stretching out like an eternity. When they were out of sight, Kaine exhaled, his heart pounding in his chest. He was close now. The next challenge was finding his team, but first, he needed to know what Cross was up to. The thought of his betrayal, of the countless lives Cross had sacrificed for his own gain, was enough to make Kaine's blood boil. Ahead, a pair of double doors stood between him and the command center. He had to get inside. Kaine's instincts told him that's where the answers lay. The doors were locked, but he had no time for finesse. He raised his gun and shot a controlled burst at the lock. The door flung open with a loud clang, and Kaine slipped through. Inside, the room was a command center, filled with blinking lights, holographic screens, and alien technology that hummed with an eerie life of its own. In the center of it all stood Cross, his back turned, speaking with someone over a comm channel. Kaine froze. His breath caught in his throat. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. Cross was standing with a high-ranking alien officer. The conversation was terse, their words clipped and calculated. Kaine's mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. "We have everything in place," Cross said, his voice smooth, devoid of any trace of humanity. "The final phase begins in 3 hours. With the human resistance crushed, we can move forward with the plan." The alien officer's voice crackled in Kaine's earpiece, cold and detached. "Humanity is expendable. You will not fail." Kaine's heart pounded as the pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about betrayal. It wasn't just about survival. Cross had handed over humanity's future to the aliens. He had sold them out for the promise of power, of becoming something more than human. Kaine's gut churned with disgust. Before he could react, Cross turned, sensing the shift in the air. His eyes locked onto Kaine's, and for a brief, terrifying moment, there was silence. "Did you really think you could escape?" Cross's voice was cold, but there was something else behind it, something darker. "You're too late. The human resistance is finished." Kaine stepped into the room, his gun raised, his eyes burning with the fury of betrayal. "I'm not finished yet," he said through gritted teeth. Cross's eyes flickered with surprise, but it was fleeting. He quickly regained his composure, stepping back and signaling the alien officer. "Activate the containment protocol. He can't leave this room alive." The officer didn't hesitate. He pressed a button on his wrist device, and the room's temperature plummeted. Kaine felt the cold seep into his bones, a biting chill that froze the air. The lights flickered, and Kaine's vision blurred for a moment. But he didn't falter. He fired. The first shot hit the alien officer square in the chest, sending him crashing backward, his armor sparking as it absorbed the blast. The officer writhed, but didn't rise again. Kaine's focus shifted to Cross, who was already moving, darting behind a console for cover. "You've made a grave mistake, Kaine," Cross sneered from behind the console. "You think you can stop this? You're out of your league." Kaine's eyes narrowed. He was out of patience, out of options. His mind worked quickly, the tactical instinct honed through years of combat kicking in. He wasn't going to let Cross have the last word. Not after everything he'd done. With a single, deliberate move, Kaine rolled to the side, ducking behind a server rack. He fired once more, this time targeting the power grid. Sparks flew, and the entire room went dark. The emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in an eerie red glow. In the chaos, Kaine moved fast, closing the distance between himself and Cross. The traitor was cornered, but he was still dangerous. Kaine could see the desperation in his eyes as he scrambled for a weapon. "You won't win," Cross hissed. "The galaxy will be reshaped. Humanity is doomed." With one final burst of energy, Kaine lunged forward. Cross raised his weapon, but Kaine was faster. In a single, fluid motion, Kaine disarmed him, the weapon skidding across the floor. Kaine stood over him, his chest heaving, every muscle taut with the tension of the moment. "It's over," Kaine said, his voice cold and final. The ship shook again, this time with a force that sent the walls groaning. Kaine's grip tightened around Cross's collar, his knuckles white with the effort. The traitor's eyes were wide, his breath ragged as he struggled to form words. "It's not over," Cross gasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what you've unleashed." Kaine narrowed his eyes, his face hardening. "I've heard enough of your lies. It ends now." But as he spoke, the rumbling deepened, and a strange, low hum filled the room. It wasn't just the ship, it was something else. Something alive. Kaine took a step back, his eyes darting around the room. Cross's expression twisted into something between fear and resignation. The hum intensified, and then the lights flickered violently before plunging the room into darkness. Only the eerie red emergency lights remained, casting everything in a blood-soaked hue. "What's happening?" Kaine demanded, his voice sharp, his heart pounding in his chest. Cross, looking more frantic by the second, laughed bitterly. "You don't understand. You never did." Before Kaine could respond, the emergency lights buzzed, and a holographic image flickered to life in front of him. It was a map of the ship, a huge vessel, far larger than anything Kaine had ever seen. The map showed a section of the ship marked with a red X, the part of the ship they were in. Then came the voice. Cold. Unfeeling. Artificial. "Containment breach in Sector X. All units report to critical positions immediately." Kaine's heart dropped. "Containment breach? What's that supposed to mean, Cross?" Cross's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words never came. Instead, the floor beneath Kaine's feet trembled violently, sending him staggering back. A piercing screech echoed from deep within the ship, and a flood of red lights filled the chamber. Without warning, the walls began to shift, a low grinding sound following every movement. Something mechanical was unfolding, breaking free from its bonds. The sound was almost human in its agony, groaning metal, twisted gears, and the scrape of something immense and unstoppable. "What did you do?" Kaine demanded, his voice strained. "What have you really unleashed?" Cross dropped his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "It's not me, it's them." He looked up at Kaine, his eyes now full of regret. "The project, the final phase, was never about your resistance. It was always about creating something more, something beyond us. The aliens, the AIs, they've been working together, creating star. Before Kaine could ask any more questions, the door to the command center slammed open. A group of heavily armored soldiers, all wearing the same alien insignia as Cross, stormed in, weapons raised. "Get him!" one of them barked, their voice garbled through their helmets' comms. "Alive, if possible." Kaine's muscles tensed. The fight was on, but this time, he wasn't alone. He knew what Cross had been hiding now. The containment breach wasn't a mistake, it was a strategy. And now, the final weapon was coming to life. Kaine reached for his plasma gun, but before he could fire, an explosion rang out, deafening in the small chamber. A huge hole tore through the far wall, and through the gaping wound emerged something Kaine had never seen before. It was a creature, a hybrid, a grotesque blend of alien and machine. Its body was encased in thick, metallic armor, but parts of it were organic, twitching with unnatural movement. Its eyes glowed with a bright, electric blue, and its claws scraped the floor as it lurched into the room. This thing was what Cross and the aliens had been working toward. "What the hell is that?" Kaine shouted, backing away from the monstrosity as it let out a roar that shook the walls. The alien soldiers scrambled, their eyes wide with shock. "The Alpha unit, it's not supposed to be active yet. It wasn't supposed to be complete." Cross, his face pale, turned to Kaine. "You don't understand. It's the next step in evolution. It's perfect. A fusion of everything. Human, alien, AI." The Alpha unit stalked toward them, its movements jerky but powerful. Its mechanical body whirred with each step, the organic parts twitching and flailing in an eerie imitation of life. Kaine was paralyzed for a split second. He had been trained for combat, for strategy, but this was something else. There was no plan for something like this. The soldiers opened fire, but their weapons had little effect on the creature. It was too advanced, too well armored. With a single swipe of its claws, the nearest soldier was thrown across the room, crashing into the far wall. Kaine didn't hesitate. He dove for the closest console, slamming his fist down on the controls. Sparks flew, and the lights flickered once again, but this time, the creature paused, as if confused by the sudden shutdown of the room's primary systems. "Shut it down, !" Cross screamed, realizing what Kaine was doing. "You have no idea what you're doing!" But it was too late. Kaine had already initiated the emergency lockdown. The containment chamber's walls began to close, and the Alpha unit let out a sound that could only be described as a scream. With a final, desperate roar, it lunged at Kaine, but the reinforced door slammed shut just in time, trapping the creature on the other side. The room fell silent, the only sound being the low hum of the emergency lights. Kaine stood, his chest heaving, his hands shaking from the adrenaline. He looked down at Cross, who was breathing heavily, his face contorted in disbelief. "Is it over?" Cross whispered, his voice hollow. Kaine stared at him for a long moment. "No," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "It's never over." He turned and began walking toward the exit. Behind him, the doors to the control room hissed open. His team, battered but alive, filed in, their weapons ready. Kaine didn't need to tell them what had happened. They understood. "We've got a long way to go," Kaine said, his voice steely. "But this war? It's just beginning." Final twist ending asterisk. As Kaine and his team made their way through the ship, heading toward the command bridge to secure the rest of the vessel, a low, unsettling laugh echoed through the corridors. It wasn't Cross, it wasn't anyone they knew. It was something else. Something watching them. And Kaine knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. The real war had yet to unfold.